Evening, Tony Datino doing my Live with Tony on the second part of something I started on Monday. And it was an article I was reading about good anxiety and how we need to have resilience in dealing with the adversities and the stresses and the challenges that we have in our lives. So I wanted to pick that up and I wanted to go through the second part of that. And I wanted to make sure nobody's watching the TV behind me. All right, so what are we talking about? We're talking about the anxiety we have and what it does to our mental thinking and our cognitive fitness as we think about being stressed or distracted or at the end of our line. What can we do about it? And so I started quickly with a couple of points yesterday is changing how we see outcomes and what can we do to visualize a different set of outcomes. And I started talking about the second thing called plasticity and realizing that our brain has an amazing ability to repopulate itself and rewire our dendritic spines and the wiring that we have in terms of memory traces. And I covered the first couple of those, which were anger and fear. So what do we do and how do we use anger in a positive way? What can we do in terms of fear and changing our environment? I now wanted to go to the next element of that, which is sadness. So in the element of resilience, what the research was suggesting is that we build resilience by how we deal with the plasticity of changing our thinking patterns on anger, on the way we view the perspective we have with fear, and then how we deal with sadness. And sadness was interesting because it really, I find myself sometimes saying about, gee, isn't that sad? Or when you're watching somebody's life experience, you say, gee, isn't it sad? And I was watching a program yesterday and somebody taking advantage of a handicapped individual. And I said, isn't that sad? So what happens to our mind when we stop and we see ourselves in what I call a sad state, which just, it's kind of energy draining. It just takes so much out of us to say, my goodness, this is so sad. Why would somebody do that to somebody else? And why would they take advantage of them in such a poor way, especially someone that's been handicapped? So how do we change that? What do we do in terms of looking at our circumstances, or if we're sad ourselves, what is it we can do in terms of it? And we know what those things are. And we know that the first thing we got to do is just look at our environment. And I say environment would be, it doesn't mean you have to move your house or you have to go live somewhere else. It means you just need to get out somewhere that's safe. And again, we've got a new update today on COVID and a new variant that's popping out in terms of that. But what can we do in maintaining a safe distancing and a safe social level of interaction and just change our environment? And then relook at our circumstances and say, okay, what are the circumstances that we have and how might we be able to change our behaviors to better fit into those? So I was at a meeting today and learning about some things that we want to do next year. And some of the things that were coming at us, they were talking about how sad it was for people that begin to lose their mental functions. And boy, if that is not something I've seen in my own family several times, and it just kind of takes your breath away, this notion of dementia or Alzheimer's, cognitive impairment is sad, because if there's one thing I've learned is people always want to be able to feel that they've got mental function. And we look at that in a way that when we describe it, we say, isn't it sad when someone who was so brilliant and had such a mental state that they lose some of that? And what we know today is there are some things that we may be able to do at any age to begin to try to minimize that and try to minimize the sadness and or the loss of one's mental capacities and intellect and thinking. So what do we do with that? Well, we just don't want to just worry about it. We just don't want to be stressed and fear it. there are things that we might be able to do today, and we're beginning to learn what the things are that cover our mental health and what are some of those elements of mental health. And so rather than just worry about it, I talk to people and say, but you got to get out of the worry state. You've got to change your neural patterns and you've got to do something. And we know getting out with nature is one of those things that we can do that is excellent for us. And what we're learning more and more. And for different people, it's different sounds of nature. So I think of the birds or the leaves crackling. Or an animal walking through them. And it might be a squirrel. It may be a bigger animal. Here we have bobcats that go through our woods in the neighborhood that I live in. We've seen the wild boar that have gone through. So we see deer that go through. But the sound, just the sound of nature. We had raccoons trying to climb our house yesterday. And they were little baby raccoons. And you say, oh my goodness. But my point is getting out with nature. So how do you deal with the sadness sometimes and the worry that we have? We need to change our thought patterns, or we need to change our environment. And what I find for myself especially, there are times when I feel like I need to just get out. I need to get out and get into the fresh air, get out of the house, and still be safe. Sometimes I may just go take a walk, live on a dead-end street in Windermere, Florida, and I say, you know what, dead-end street, let me just walk to the end of the street and turn around and walk on the other side and just look at the plants and the flowers, and now at this time of the year, the Christmas decorations that people have. Let me just change my environment, the circumstances I find myself in at a given point in time, and try to bring myself into a more positive state of being. And so nature to me is really, really a helpful way. And I've read so much about it, even to the point of the pictures that we look at. So I'm sure anyone can afford to go and find pictures of nature and trees and waterfalls. I get these calendars that are in the mail all the time. And next year's calendar, this year's, I go through them for pictures. I see birds, I see wildlife of different kinds, I see waterfalls, I see mountains, and I take calendars and I keep a couple of them and cut out the pictures that I like. And once a month, I change pictures on two spots in my house. One is on the refrigerator and the other is on our thermometer that we use. And I just look at those pictures sometimes and I'll stop and stare and I'll look. So now if I look over to here, I've got a picture of a mountain range and trees and things growing up the mountains, and then a cliff that shows up on the side of it. And so I find that nature is a fabulous way of dealing with our circumstances in our environment. And it doesn't need to be, I need to be at that mountain. I can go look at that and just see myself being in it. Waterfalls, I can see myself sitting at the edge of a stream where waterfalls are coming down, and just sitting there and hearing the sounds of the water coming over the rocks, coming down and making a noise. I think often about a trip I took to Niagara Falls and watching what the horseshoe falls were doing, and just watching them come down at night. They put the lights on them, just the sound of it, and just looking at the motion of the water and things of that sort. So nature is a great way of helping us to deal with the sadness, the worry, the frustrations that we deal at a state in our minds where we have something that's just kind of weighting us down, and we need that lift. We just need that lift that brings us into a more positive state that we can share with people. And so I look at the changing of our own environment as a crucial thing. And I say sometimes even with the people that we talk to, and we want to find what I call the upbeat people, the ones that are optimistic. And it's been written about, having mastermind groups with people that are can-dos, and the folks around your life that are with you and will support you in times of need, not make judgments and things of that sort. Another thing that I find that helps build a resilience that we have to our anxieties is learning something new. And I hear people use the word focus, to refocus. And there's nothing like refocusing or focusing on something new that you want to learn, or something new you want to read, something, maybe a new TV program. My goodness, today's TV channels have anywhere from science to the Smithsonian. I sometimes love the Smithsonian channel because it takes you back into history and how the different events of mankind have brought us to where we are. And sometimes they have the sites of railroads. Like I'm a train guy, so they take you on these different train trips, or they take you into different elements of our history, of the Egyptian tombs and things of that sort. But this doing something new, something you just have never thought to do before. And what we do know is our mental challenges and learning new things are fantastic for our brain health. So thinking of how you can bring some newness into your life, and you know, this is not easy. Sometimes I say that to people, and they're just so sad and they're so stressed and they're just so bogged down. But I try to encourage them. I say, look, can we do this together? Can I give you a little hug and give you a little encouragement? What can I do to help bring you to a state where you at least try doing something different and learning something new? And then last but not least, all of this that I'm talking to you now right now wraps up in the building the resilience around bringing positive thinking into your head. And again, boy, so much has been written about this, and when you try to get people when they're sad or depressed or anxious or in a mode of anxiety, to think of something positive, it's got to be probably one of the most difficult things. And so I make some space for people, and I say, here's my general rule of thumb, and I try to do this myself. I say, one day a month, I'll use a month as my parameter. I want you to have one day a month where you have decided to make that day your pity party day. And what I mean by that is all the things that stress and worry and cause you to feel low and down and just out of sorts, just pile it into one day. So start it out at 8 o'clock in the morning and you finish it up at 6 o'clock at night and make that your day for the pity party. And you just pour it all on there for that one day and make it, if you want to vary it, month to month and different days and what have you, when you just feel like the world is on top of your shoulders, just do that. But here's what comes out of that. In that one day, you just pile it all on and you just think about how miserable you want to be and how god awful worries and stresses are. But at 6 p.m. at night, you go out and have a bite to eat and you treat yourself to maybe a little bit of dessert, and you are going to resign yourself to having a great night's sleep, and you are going to begin learning something new the next day. And maybe that night you take a walk outside after dinner and just, you don't even have to talk to people, just say hello to them, go look at someone's house, look at a decoration, look at a window. And you can do that in the city, you can do that in the suburbs. I mean, there's no place you can't go out and walk and just observe other buildings, trees, people, and use that as a way of resetting your mental thinking. And there it all shows up, as I tell people, how well is your sleep? And how well your sleep is really a reflection for all of the things going on in your life and how well you are processing those elements in your life. That is the summary of what I wanted to do. So what we've been talking about here is, can there be good anxiety? And can we learn how to take anxiety and visualize different outcomes and build the level of resilience where we bounce back up and we bounce off the stresses and the issues that we have in our life and just change our internal dialogue and flip that dialogue around. So we take anger and we use it as a motivator. We take fear and we teach it as a learning lesson. We take sadness and we look at the circumstances where we can make changes in our life that bring nature and different people and different circumstances and different learning activities into our lives, where we then reach out and we just reach out to people, and maybe we pick up the phone, and we got cell phones, we got text messages, we got all kinds of ways of communicating with people today, where it just helps us to bring a new perspective to the way we're dealing with things in our lives. And of course, I spent some time talking about nature, the importance that research continues to show, the importance of what nature does for us and bringing us back to our roots, basic fundamentals, and gives us an uplifting feel. I enjoy doing these. I just always pray that I catch one person on every one of my broadcasts that grabs one little nugget one little nugget from each of my Live with Tonys, that what we know is if we can get that one new thing into your incredibly powerful thinking process, that we can make life-altering changes to each and every person that decides we're going to act on this. We're going to take a step and we're going to start moving it into a different direction. And as I always say to people, I am so passionate by this. You can always send me a personal email at adottino@aol.com. That's adottino@aol.com. And I'd gladly engage with anyone where I can make that one bit of difference in helping people get through some of the challenges and some of the upsides that we have in life, and make some suggestions on things that we may be able to do to alter our thinking and improve our mental health. Have a good evening. We'll see you back here on Friday.